Welcome to the Fatal Facts of Fentanyl. This is dedicated to raising awareness of the illicit fentanyl crisis hitting the USA. It is killing tens of thousands of people who suffer from substance abuse, disorders, and first-time users. There are no boundaries. It is straight across the board with a number of deaths without any regard to race, sex, socioeconomics, age, education, religious background, or location. It is in every community within our country. The fentanyl crisis is deadlier than ever before for various reasons. It is time to address the many issues surrounding this crisis. It is time to listen and learn from experts. It is time to hear the many stories from people who have lost their loved ones due to death by deception. Change begins with each of us as individuals and collaboration with others towards this positive transformation. The goal is to save lives and families from this travesty. Awareness and education are the key. Knowledge is power. I am your host, Lisa Carol Cood, an educator and advocate to help bring awareness to the fentanyl crisis touching every facet of our society. I am a mother who recently lost her son to fentanyl poisoning. I know firsthand the pain of grief surrounding the loss of my firstborn son. I created this podcast in hopes of channeling my heartbreak and put my energy into trying to prevent similar tragedies. I find solace and strength in working to spare other families a similar grief and any person battling this addiction. Tragedy has a way of being something powerful. This is in honor of my beautiful son's life, forever 32. Right here on Fatal Facts of Fentanyl, you will learn from experts on the front line combating the many issues surrounding fentanyl. You will hear personal stories from families and friends who have lost their loved ones and have taken their grief and pain to turn it around to make positive changes and bring awareness and education. You will also listen to people who have struggled with an opioid addiction and are still struggling and are now in active recovery. All of us share a common bond. We are all here to make a difference. We are all here to bring you the fatal facts of fentanyl. This week's guest will be sharing her heartbreaking story of not only losing one son, but her only two sons due to separate tragedies. Her older son, Stephen, was robbed, then shot and killed. His younger brother, Michael, turned to opiates to help relieve his pain of losing his older brother. His journey led him to an addiction that he tried so hard to combat, yet he died from fentanyl poisoning. In speaking with their mother, her name is Freida, we each agreed that both of her sons' stories need to be shared. Although Stephen and Michael died 4 years apart, each at the young age of 24, as close brothers, their lives and their deaths are intertwined. I believe everyone has a unique story to tell that brings value to the world. Freida is a very unique, inspirational, and strong woman. Her story will help others understand about addiction and how to turn your sorrow and grief into helping others. Let's all listen and learn.
Lisa, it's so good to be here today.
Hi, Freida. Thank you. Thank you for this interview. I've come to know you as a friend. Please share with our audience your story about your beautiful boys.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity, Lisa. As you mentioned, I lost my son, Stephen, Stephen Hoyle, January the 26th, 2012, and it was a homicide, and we lost him from gunshot. And his brother Michael was very understandably devastated, as we all were. And many of his friends said that at that point in his life that we began to lose Michael at the same time that we lost Stephen. I will say that for myself, I got very busy going to grief groups, trying to get myself surrounded by people that understood, that had also lost someone. And I managed to find a connection with other people that had lost someone to homicide, and that helped me. But for Michael, he found other ways to deal with his grief, and unfortunately, he began to self-medicate, and a part of that ended up introducing him to what he said, the world of Roxys, and in that world, he became addicted in a relatively fast period of time. And he also shared with me that as a result of taking the Roxys and getting addicted to them, that the opportunity to get them was becoming more and more limited as time went on. And he began to get them on the streets, and that's what ended up with his heroin addiction. So we went from prescription pain pills to pills on the street to heroin in a relatively short period of time.
Yes, ma'am. I'm so sorry. I know this is painful for everybody within a family. So what I'm hearing from you, Freida, do you feel the pain of losing Stephen led Michael to opiates in order to help him numb and cope with his pain?
I do. I feel like that he would say to me, I think this is the best way to remember it. He would say to me, "I'm really proud of you, Mom, for going to the grief groups." I actually began to facilitate some homicide grief groups, and he would give me credit for doing that, for dealing with my pain in that way. He always said that he was just so proud of me for doing it. I obviously would invite him to go with me to some visuals and some other things associated with the things that I was doing around homicide. And he just always said that he just did not feel like he could do that. But as all of us know, we are going to do something with our pain. And when you are a very young person, 20 years old, and you're struggling with that kind of grief, just knowing that there might be something that will take away that pain, you're not going to think it through in the way that you may if you were an older person or a person that had more life experience. And so for him, that was the choice that he took, just numb the pain.
Exactly. I have heard this story before numerous times, and in order to hide the pain, that's actually what addiction is to cover and hide the pain. And unfortunately, the opiates, like you said, it started with Roxys, which is actually a form of Oxycontin. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then it moves to the street heroin, and now it's fentanyl that's killing people, and it's more deadly out here. Can you tell me experiences and what you have learned about fentanyl?
Well, interestingly enough, as I said, Michael himself told me that he was using Roxys as he was reflecting back by the time we got to rehab. So fentanyl at that time, and we're talking now about 2013, end of 2013, 2014, and 2015. So we've learned a lot since then, I believe. But at that time, I did not even, fentanyl was not on my radar. I was not hearing about fentanyl. I was not talking about fentanyl with people. I was talking to people about oxys and having addictions around that and it leading to heroin, but not fentanyl. And so that was a new thing. The first time I heard about fentanyl was when I got the toxicology report for my son. I did not know about it then. So I often say, I wish I had known then what I know now. And of course, it's a huge problem now, and we're hearing it all the time, especially in the grief groups and in the recovery groups. Everybody is losing loved ones to fentanyl. But at that time, I didn't know about it. And that is what Michael died from. And I know that some people do go seek fentanyl. I understand that from just talking with people that are struggling with addiction. But I believe at that time that Michael was in a rehab. He was in a recovery house, and he was in, I believe he just relapsed, and he was searching for heroin and did not realize what he was getting. And I do know who he was with, and that story's been pretty much backed up by the person that he was with, that he didn't know he was doing fentanyl. And so when he used what he thought was an amount that he was accustomed to using, it was much stronger, obviously. And it turned out from the toxicology report that he really didn't have any heroin in his system. He had fentanyl, and that was February of 2016. So that was something that I saw in a lot of other reports after his, that for a couple of months after that, we lost quite a few people from that particular type of fentanyl.
Freida, you and I share the same story, actually. That's actually what happened, same parallel lives as with my son. He was in active recovery and in a recovery house, and both he and his roommate died of pure fentanyl. And I truly believe I spent the day with him that day, and he showed me no indications of relapsing, which was a shock to me and his family when he passed away. But I was under the same as you. I didn't have a clue about fentanyl. I didn't know anything about fentanyl until his toxicology report. And he had a trace of cocaine. So I truly believe that he wasn't purposely buying fentanyl. If he was, it was news to me because I never heard of it. And he actually, I think, was buying or given something that he didn't have a clue the amount of fentanyl that was in this. So it's death by deception as far as I'm concerned, and listening to you and so many parents. Tell us, in your experience now that you have unfortunately had to learn this, all of us had to learn this the hard way. Tell us what you have learned. I know you are helping other people, but tell us what you have learned by the pressed pills that are out here, people buying counterfeit pills, all fentanyl. They think they're getting other drugs. Can you elaborate on that for us and teach our audience what is truly going on nowadays?
What I've learned, Lisa, since being introduced to this from the loss of Michael, is that once an addiction takes hold, and so often it does take hold from some sort of a oxy prescription, that a big percentage of the time I've seen that to be true, and it may happen in different ways. In my case, it was from grief, from the loss of a brother. In many of my friends' cases, with whether it's their own addiction or their loved one's addiction, it was accidents, injuries, prescriptions, and that to me seems to be the majority of the time. Unfortunately, the hold of addiction comes on very, very quickly with the especially with the young people. I know it's across the board and it does not discriminate, but with the young people, they're a little bit more of a risk taker, as we probably all were, in that they'll say, well, if this makes me not feel it as much, another one will make me not feel it at all. And they just don't even realize the danger that they're looking at. So with the terrible fentanyl issue that we're having, even with the pill mills and the places that were prescribing it throughout the country as these years have unfolded, the likelihood that someone would be there that would know that someone could be addicted that was there. I've oftentimes heard that right outside the place where they went to get their prescription, there was somebody that they could go to if they couldn't get what they needed. That would literally be in the parking lot, just pretty much waiting for them. So it's become it became, as the pain clinics popped up across the country, and as it became more of an epidemic, it was so easy. It was actually easier to get it from the person on the street than it was to get it from a doctor or from a clinic, because they began to put it in the computer that you were getting it, and they could compare and they could see if you were getting it somewhere else. And it became more expensive for them, and it was cheaper on the street. And so what I didn't understand that I understand now is that you can get a bag of heroin or a bundle for $10, or in some places up the road you might be able to get it for $8, and you might have to pay $25 or $30 for a pill. And so obviously it just as the addiction kicks in, it makes sense to just be able to get as most as you can. What I didn't know that I know now is really oxy and heroin is the very same thing. It's the same drug. Stigma makes it sound like you're taking something a lot worse if you're doing heroin versus taking something that was prescribed. But it's really the same thing. And the fentanyl began to show up because it was cheaper and it could be cut into the heroin. So it was cheaper for the dealer. And it was easy, especially in the beginning on the East Coast. It would come in from China, and it was easy to put it into as a powder into it. That would have been a little bit more difficult with black tar coming up from Mexico into the West years ago. But it was easy with the powder to cut it into it. And so that became more of the go-to. And the stronger the addiction, the longer the addiction has gone on, and tolerance begins to build. That's why you do hear people saying that they actually were seeking some fentanyl, because they knew that that would give them what they needed to not be dope sick anymore. And the fentanyl from China was being, like the Fentanyl fentanyl definitely came from China, and it was being ordered online. So it was an opportunity for people to make a lot of money and sell it really quickly, because the amount of people that were in addiction had grown substantially over the years that my children were, or our children, I should say, were in those very vulnerable times in their lives. So that's, I guess, the biggest lesson that I've learned from it is the danger of the respiratory system shutting down is something that we're hearing more about. But I don't know that in 2016, I don't really know that my son even was worried about that. I think that he just thought as long as he could measure it out and he was doing what he was had always done, that he didn't have anything to worry about. And I really think that was the case then. I've also heard people say that they started getting worried about the fentanyl being in heroin. And so they started doing some other types of meth has risen and has gotten more popular. And there was an illusion that, well, the fentanyl showing up in the heroin, but not necessarily in the meth. But that's not even the case anymore. Now it's showing up in everything, the meth, the cocaine, as well as the heroin. And most of the time with addiction, it really is polyuse, because you've got to have something to get you back up again if you're still working, if you're still doing something. I didn't understand any of those things when my son was living, but I do understand them now.
Yes, ma'am. I understand more about it myself. We've had to educate ourselves over the years, and it's not been easy. Um, However, I don't want to give up on hope, and I know you don't either. You're truly an amazing and true inspiration, and I'd like for you to share with our audience all of the many projects that you have established and work on in honor of your son's lives.
Oh, I'll be glad to. Thank you for the opportunity. My son, Stephen, he had a tattoo that said no, K-N-O-W, hope. And his no hope tattoo kind of surprised me. It was the first one he had ever gotten. And I didn't have one at the time. And I was just questioning him about why he got that. And he said, "You got to know hope, Mama." And that just really has stuck with me, particularly after losing him. And so I have started a nonprofit, No Hope North Carolina. And the mission of that is to remember all of those that we've lost and to give hope to those who are struggling. And of course, to support those in recovery. I always feel like that any of my loved ones, and I have a lot that are in recovery, they're heroes to me. Anybody that's working on battling this demon, they have to do it every day. And my son Michael, his favorite reading in NA when he was really working on his own sobriety was Just for Today. And I feel like that No Hope and Just for Today go together very well, because that's all any of us can do. Just for today, no hope. And I feel like that the grief that we are experiencing in these horrific losses that we've had is very parallel to being in recovery. I'm not trying to say at all that I don't think that their struggle, a person that is in recovery is not different, in the sense that I know that being dope sick and the shame and guilt and all those things that go along with addiction are just absolutely horrific. But where I see the parallel is that once we have this kind of grief, or once we have this kind of addiction, it's with us. We have to face it every single day for the remainder of our lives. We can't just walk away from it. And I know that my son, if he had realized, and again, I'm talking about Michael and his addiction, if he had realized that once he opened that door to the Roxys, which led to the heroin, which led to his death from fentanyl, that he would have never opened the door. So knowledge, and from thinking about it, from if Michael were still here, knowledge is not only powerful, but it generates compassion and patience, because I realize that if Michael had really known what he was getting into, that he wouldn't have made that choice. And you oftentimes hear, well, they're making a choice. And my response to that is, they may have been making a choice in the beginning, but once took a hold of them, once they were in the throes of addiction, once their decision-making capabilities became compromised, and once all the triggers of dopamine and wanting to use again kicked in, that's not a choice. That's an addiction. That's a brain disease. And that's something that they have to struggle with every single day of their lives. And to me, that's a brave person that says, enough is enough, and I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to give up everything I know to go into some kind of a program for a period of time and work on myself and be willing to get up every day and do it again.
Yes, you're very correct when you say that. I used to tell my son, you are the strongest person I know in order to face this and try to do something about it, because it takes a lot of strength and courage, and it is not easy. It's like a merry-go-round that someone cannot get off of. Freida, I also want to know, what inspires you? What moves you? I understand that you also are helping now with other recovering addicts, and they're in active recovery right now. Tell me about that experience, and I'm sure they love you and they are so appreciative of you, but tell me how that has changed your life too in helping other people with this.
Thank you, Lisa, for the opportunity. I can honestly say that out of everything that I'm trying to do right now with No Hope North Carolina, and with what I've mentioned about support groups and helping people, supporting people in recovery, what really makes my heart sing and gives me the most hope is seeing someone that has been really struggling with their addiction and reach out and say, you know what, I really need to get into detox and I really need to get a long-term plan in place. And that there's nothing that is more rewarding than being able to take someone to a detox, watch them go through their intake and assessment, and spend that 7 to 10 days, whatever the case may be, and do that, and then say, I don't want to just go back and I know I'll just end up going back and doing the same things. I want to go straight from here and do something else. And to see that happen, and then to actually witness someone coming out of a year-long program and graduating from it, and then speaking at a group to people that have only been in recovery from 30 days, it just warms my heart. And I have had the opportunity, not from really anything at all that I've done, but I've had the opportunity because of the people that Stephen and Michael knew, that both know that I have helped other people. Their friends and loved ones have come to me particularly over the last 5 years, asking for help. And so I've had the privilege of being able to, that news has been shared with their friends. And so I've just had the privilege of having a lot of people come to me and want help, and seeing them do well, even if it doesn't matter how long it takes, back and forth, to seeing them once they get that seed planted of recovery or that tool in their tool belt and they want to continue to go. I'm always just so honored to be able to watch that process unfold. That's one of the most rewarding things that I can say about what I do now.
Well, thank you so much. What I'm hearing from you is recovery is possible. And I hope and pray that more awareness and education is brought to this matter. I hope the stigma goes away. And I just want to thank you so very much for this interview and everything that you do. My heart and prayers go out to you, my friend. And I'm so honored to have you and as my friend, and to have met you. And amidst our pain, there are moments of joy. And I just want to wish you many blessings. Thank you, Freida.
Thank you, Lisa.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to this weekly podcast. Visit our website, which is linked below in the description. On the website, click on the social media icons, and feel free to share this podcast with others. And also, please leave your reviews and ask questions that you would like for me to ask our guest for our next episode, dealing with the fatal facts of fentanyl. Enjoy your week. Many blessings.